Okay, so in this video we're going to be looking at creating the drums for the track Hausitch. Now first of all, before we jump into programming the audio samples, we will have a look at the two channels that are already in the Logic X project. So the top lane here is an AU plugin called Loop Cloud. Now this is actually a two-part device. We've got one running through Logic and then this connects to a third-party application. And this is pretty much the only thing I use for programming drums. It's absolutely amazing, but we'll get into that shortly. So hit that. And the second channel is a lane of pink noise. Now this is something that we're going to have a look at further in the video series when we come to mixing. So without further ado, you should have been given a folder with some audio samples in for the purpose of this project. So if you open that up and have a look, there should be a sample called Kick 1 Mesk. So let's pull this into the project. Now by default, this is actually a sequenced loop, which we don't need. We are wanting a single shot. So if we make sure our secondary tool is set to scissors, hold Command and take one of these. We can then duplicate these by holding Alt and dragging, and we can create an 8-bar loop. Okay, so let's just do that. And then we'll take a quick listen to the audio sample itself. So as you can hear, this kick is very punchy. It's got a lot of punch around between 100 and 150 hertz. It's really driving. It cuts through the mix great, and it's a kick sample I've used in a lot of my productions. It's really, really good. It's a strong sample and a great backbone to build the track around. So we're not actually going to play around with any EQ on this yet, but we will now jump into adding some clap samples. So if you go back in the folder, you'll see two audio samples titled Clap 1 and Clap 2. So if we drag both of them in onto their own lanes, we want to sequence these on every second and fourth kick. So we can do this by selecting them all, and same again, Alt and drag. And we'll just make this 8 bars as well. So let's have a listen to these claps in isolation. Just pull the volume faders down. So clap 1 sounds like this. So this clap's quite brushy on the top end. It's got a nice fizz that's going to help it cut through the mix. And then clap 2 has a little bit more punch. Now on their own in solo they sound a bit weak, but let's just play them together without any processing, and you'll hear how they really work together to create a great combined sound. So great. You can hear that we're using the top end from one and the punch of the mid-range from the other, and that's gelling together to formulate a really solid clap. So a little bit of processing we can do on these is activate the EQ, take a look at where this is sitting in the frequency register. So on clap 1, you can see that there's quite a lot of content going off under 200 hertz. Now this is only going to muddy the mix up further down the line. So we can activate a high pass shelf and set it to 48, so it's quite steep. And let's just cut up to 200 hertz. I mean, I know 200 hertz is going to be the roundabout point where this is really thumping, so we don't want to take too much more off above that, or it's going to really start affecting the fundamentals of the clap and making it sound a bit thinner. So somewhere around there would be great. That's too little. That's too much. Somewhere around there would be great. We can also activate a band above it and make this quite narrow. And we can start pushing this up quite high and sweeping through to see if there's any bad frequencies that we can remove. So let's take a listen for that. So there sounds just like a real bumper resonance. So let's just remove a couple of dB of that. And then maybe we could activate another one and see if there's anything a little higher up. You genuinely want to have quite a narrow band when you're doing this, so you can really home in on the bad frequencies and take them out accordingly. So what we're listening for really is that really prominent kind of whistling resonance. So maybe somewhere around there, about 4K. About there. So let's have a listen to that on and off. I'm sure the differences will only be subtle, but getting a great mix and a great sound is effectively a series of small changes across a lot of channels that all come together to make a better end result. So that's with and without, with. So you can really hear how that taking that bottom end's kind of tighten up the sound, and taking out these little bits of resonance here as it helps sound it a little bit cleaner and tighter. So let's have a look at clap 2. Same again, let's activate an EQ. Now this one's got nothing at all, under about 250 Hz and below. So let's activate a high pass, set it to 48 dB slope, and then we'll just come all the way up to the start of that visible content. Activate a bell, see if there's any bad frequencies we can remove. So somewhere around there doesn't sound too good. Let's pull some of that out. Yeah, I think the rest of it sounds fine. So let's now play this together. Yeah. So they're sounding much better now. And finally what we can do is add a little bit of send reverb. Now I've already set up this send reverb. If you don't know how to do that in Logic X, all you have to do is simply press X to open the mixer, go to options, create an auxiliary send, go to the input, select bus, select a free bus channel, so something that's not being used, add your effect on here, make sure the wet's all the way to full, and then put your channel up. Call it whatever you want, and then when you go onto the channel itself, if you come to the left here, you can see a little box called send. If you click bus, that's the one I've just created, and these are the ones that are already created on my template. So, small verb. Now this small reverb setting is actually a default preset in Logic, and it comes from the Space Designer plugin. It's probably the best send reverb for drums I've ever used, and that's including third-party plugins. So you can access this by simply going to the drop-down box at the top, going to small spaces, plate reverbs, and then drum plate. So make sure the mix is up to full on the wet, and then simply turn the dial, and this will start feeding it into this send reverb. So let's do these one at a time. So we just want a little bit, somewhere like that, and clap 2. Just a little bit. You can just hear how it's putting it in its own space. It's sounding a bit fuller and not as boring. So let's lay them together. Yeah, and in conjunction with the kick drum. So yeah, that's sounding wicked. So finally for this video, the last thing I'll do, and I do this with my kicks in every project, as well as my bass lines, which I'll show you when we get to the bass. But if we click on the kick lane and click these mirrors at the top, well, windows, mirrors, whatever they are, click that, and that'll duplicate the settings. Fortunately, we've actually got no settings on here, so it's not duplicating anything. But if we take the last 4 kicks of the 8-bar loop, drag them down, we can call this high cut kick. And what we're going to do on this is we just activate an EQ, activate the high pass filter, and we will just shave off probably up to around anywhere between 150 and 200 Hz, just so we've got a nice quickie kick like that. Something like that. And what these do is basically every 8 or 16 bars, I'll always drop the bottom end from the kick drum, and that's almost signifying that something's happening. So whether we're going into a breakdown, whether we're going into a bigger section of the drop, or just advancing the track, the great little transitional effects, if that's what you want to call them, but they work really well. So I usually have a 1-bar one on the 8-bar and a 2-bar one on the 16-bar, and usually I'll also mimic this with the bass line when that gets going as well, and then I'll have maybe a few crashes or a snare roll, a few effects, and this is really how I help push my productions. So in the next video, we're going to look at adding hats, percussions, and additional drums that's really going to start filling up the groove.
Thanks everybody for watching, commenting, and indeed liking. We really do appreciate all the support we get here on our Sonic Academy YouTube channel. So if you found this video super useful, please, we'd love you to hit the subscribe button. We update the YouTube channel every week with new content. And if you want to watch some more relevant content, just click on the videos beside me.